Perfect. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Linda Derhack, the Energy and Climate Outreach Associate here at Illinois Extension and your moderator for this webinar today. And today we will be guiding you through the grant application journey from creating an actionable community vision to developing a strong competitive grant proposal. This webinar is co-sponsored by Prairie Rivers Network. We are recording this webinar and you will get a link to the recording and contact information for the speakers in the next few days. You will also get access to their slides. You can always find local government education webinars on our YouTube channel. Before we get into our speakers, I just wanted to share that we are doing a little survey just to help inform future topics, just to make sure that these webinars are meeting your needs. And so it takes 5 minutes, it's anonymous, and it closes in June. And I will put a link to this in the chat. And you can go ahead and finish this after the webinar. If you'd like to give us some feedback. All right. So here's our agenda for today. We will have 4 speakers, each will present, and then we will take questions at the end of the presentations. And if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat and we will share questions with the speakers during the Q&A at the end. And depending on the question, speakers may answer in the chat as well. So as you can see, we're going to start by talking about creating a community vision, then navigating grant portals, and then developing a grant proposal. And then we will have time at the end for a Q&A. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who is going to be discussing creating a community vision, Susan Odom, Community and Economic Development Specialist at Illinois Extension. Her community development education programs provide rural residents with the knowledge needed to break the cycle of decline impacting many of Illinois' small rural communities. Susan graduated from Southern Illinois University Carbondale with a Master of Business Administration in 2003, and she began her career with the University of Extension in 2005. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Linda. Want to make sure that you can see my slides before I get started. Can someone?
They look great.
Okay. So I'm going to be talking about building community capacity and just verify that the slides are advancing. See the next slide, correct?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to be talking about this resilient communities topic today. And resilient communities really have the capacity to identify problems, establish priorities, and act. So we're going to focus on those 3 topics today. So first of all, we're going to talk about identifying problems. And we know that there are a myriad of issues facing counties and communities in Illinois, including aging infrastructure, and even where does the funding come from for needed repairs and or upgrades to their infrastructure. Many are also dealing with financial stressors, so even match components of grants can be a challenge for many communities. Communities are also dealing with housing shortages, or at least issues with having the right type of housing that new residents might be looking for. They're also experiencing inactive downtowns. So downtowns that maybe have experienced a lack of investment for many years, many even with vacant buildings within them. And sadly, even in general, vacant and derelict structures throughout the community that don't indicate that the community is either resilient or vibrant. Over the years, we've also saw a lack of investment in youth priorities, and some of that is given the challenges that we just talked about above. And then we know that there's been issues with population loss, as we saw significant loss of population for many of Illinois' rural counties, even from 2010 to 2020. So first, we've identified what the issues are, or some of the basic issues that communities are facing. So now we're going to shift the conversation to establishing priorities for the future. Now, despite the issues facing communities, resilient communities do dot the landscape. And I even want to emphasize they do dot the rural landscape. But reversing the trend for your community starts with understanding what led to the current state. So how did you get here? And charting a path to a better tomorrow. So in my opinion, this is the most important slide in my presentation for people to understand. So, in reality, residents must come to grips with the fact that no one's coming to save their community. More than ever before, communities must be proactive, and success will only come as the community creates the future that it wants to see by investing in itself. So now we're going to discuss developing a cohesive community vision, because developing that community vision is really the important first step in creating the future for the community that you want to see. The vision provides the community with goals and a shared sense of purpose and strategies needed to become a resilient community, because the vision is that shared image of what a community wants to become over the next 5 to 10 years. So it's looking to the year 2030 and often beyond. So without a plan, where are you headed? Where are you going to end up? It's like going on a trip without a road map or GPS. Sadly, many communities are just going by day. Nothing's improving. There's no real changes occurring. So they're just on a slow, steady downward spiral of decline. And it's really like that frog in the boiling pot metaphor. So if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it'll jump out. However, if you put it in a pot and you slowly turn up the heat, he'll slowly boil to death. So the moral of that story is we tend to accept things that grow on us gradually and steadily over time, which can certainly result in community decline. So the planning process is really about where are we now? So that's evaluating your assets, doing an inventory of those. And that often includes something that they call a SWOT. So it's looking at internally your strengths and weaknesses, and also what are those external opportunities and threats to the community. Then also, where are you going? Thinking about, if we don't do anything, if we just stay on the path that we're on right now, where are we going to be 5 to 10 years? And the most important question, where do we want to be? Or what do we want to go? What do we want to see for the future of our community? And what does that preferred future look like based on the community's shared values and aspirations? Then how do we get there? So decisions and actions that can help you accomplish that vision. And those often include indicators and measurements. We often refer to those as SMART goals. So things that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, so that you can evaluate your progress and see how you're doing. So you can monitor that progress and, hey, recalibrate if you need to. So without a plan, it's like trying to put together that jigsaw puzzle without knowing what the picture is supposed to look like. If you don't know what the end result is, how do you know when you've accomplished it? How do you know if you've gotten anywhere? But the vision shows you how those pieces are supposed to fit together. So envision the future and plan to achieve it. And I want to reiterate this because I think it's very important. Community planning requires community engagement with community members from diverse backgrounds, ages, and generations. They all have a vested interest in the future of your community, and especially youth. So don't leave them out of the planning process. So there's typically two basic types of plans that you might consider for your community. One is that long-term planning document. So it outlines the vision, goals, and strategies for the future of your community, and it includes a broad variety of topics. Then there's a strategic plan, which is typically a shorter term planning document that's going to outline specific actions or resources that may be needed to help you meet certain goals and objectives. For example, if you want to undertake a housing initiative, you might do a strategic plan focused on housing. It also might be part of a larger comprehensive plan, but the strategic plan might be just focused on that. But what you include in the plan often determines what you're trying to accomplish. But I will say, for either type of plan that you do, if it doesn't have community input, it may not gain the buy-in or the support that's needed from community members. Therefore, it's going to make a nice doorstop or a very expensive paperweight. And I know of many cases where plans have been developed for communities and they're just sitting on the shelf gathering dust. So make sure that you do a plan that is going to have buy-in from your community. So, and it is okay to engage consultants in a planning process, but remember that the plan has to be unique to your community. So a cookie cutter approach to planning typically isn't going to be an effective strategy. But working together on a shared sense of purpose fosters communication and encourages collaboration and cooperation, and it helps to mobilize community members to take action on that plan, which is really what you want to happen, is you want there to be local community buy-in. Now, community engagement can take a variety of forms. What you're basically trying to do is gather information from community members on the needs and wants. As I mentioned, it may include a SWOT analysis, so looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. There could be some other type of facilitated process. Many times there's a list of issues that are identified by the community, and then community members are asked to rank order those on importance to decide what they want to focus on first. And note that I chose this photo as a reminder on this slide, because if you want your community to move forward, everyone kind of needs to be rowing in the same direction, or you may not be going very far. So now that we've discussed establishing priorities, it's time to think about taking action, because if not now, when? So take action, monitor your progress, and recalibrate if necessary, if things aren't going quite as you thought they should be. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes. It's never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because in fact, it's the only thing that ever has. And I think it's an important reminder to communities, both large and small, that if you work together, good things can happen. So each of you joined this webinar today, so it suggests you're interested in developing a resilient community. So I encourage each of you in your communities to step up to be the change that you want to see in your community. So lastly, before I turn this over to the next presenter, I want to talk briefly about planning for success before the grant. So this is certainly not an all-inclusive list, but it's just some things to consider as you plan for success. So you need to do some research, gather some information that's outlined in the NOFO. Maybe if the new NOFO is not out, maybe look at the previous year's NOFO or contact someone who was successful getting an award in the previous round. Ask them about their experience. Very important, recognize it takes time to develop an effective proposal. There's going to be things that need to happen, perhaps letters of support, community input meetings, lots of things that may have to occur. So don't delay when you're looking at what you need to do on a grant. Also choose projects that are consistent with plans, either your local plan in your community, or maybe at least make sure it's covered by a regional SEDS plan. Throughout the area, at least here in Southern Illinois, most of our regional planning districts cover multiple counties, and they develop what's called a SEDS, a comprehensive economic development strategy for their region. Check and see if what you're looking to accomplish is perhaps covered in that plan. And then certainly make sure that your SAM and GATA are up to date. Note that some grants are on a rotating cycle. Maybe they come up only once a year or every other year. Certainly be aware of that time frame and be prepared to respond when that NOFO does come out, because many grant NOFOs do have a very short window for response. But even if the application does have a long response, you think, hey, I've got 3 months to do this. Don't let time get away from you, because it really isn't in your best interest to try to be preparing a grant application in 2 to 3 days before it's due. And also keep in mind that the grant proposal might need some information. You might have to consult an engineering firm to get some cost estimates, some information for the budget detail and the budget narrative. You might need some maps of your project area. So make sure that you allow yourself time to do that. And then also remember that there may be some new ordinances or policies that have to be enacted and by your community, either if you get the grant or maybe some in preparation for the grant, but some certainly if you do get the grant that you will have to do. So I want to, at this time, turn it over to the next presenter in today's Resilient Communities webinar. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was great. And thank you for giving a preview into the grant process that we will go into in more depth. So I will go ahead and introduce our second speaker, Adriana Perez. She's the Program Delivery Manager at the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit within the Governor's Office of Management and Budget. She brings over 20 years of experience in grant administration. She has delivered technical assistance to grantees and state agencies and has developed training materials and instructional manuals to promote consistent understanding and adherence to GATA requirements.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to start sharing my screen and get my presentation going. So piggybacking off of Susan's presentation, you're going to see a lot of things that are repetitive, but repetition is always good, especially when it comes to any type of grant items, things associated with you applying for and winning a grant. So for today's presentation, I was asked to give an overview of the navigating both GATA and Amplifund. So as I walk through several of these components, we're going to look at the registration regarding the GATA within the GATA grantee portal, how to make sure that you have access to both GATA and Amplifund, a brief overview of the Amplifund grant management system, and just touching lightly on applying, completing, and submitting your application via Amplifund. So as always, before you apply or think about applying for any type of grant, especially those that are part of a state agency, you always want to make sure that you have indeed checked and make sure that you are pre-qualified with the requirements that are part of the GATA grantee portal. In that, you want to make sure that your organization is indeed registered, that you have all of your identifiers in order and are compliant. Even things like when you are familiar with your GATA ID number, especially as you begin to apply and start communicating with that state agency. So oftentimes people ask, what is my status, or what does that mean? When you log into the GATA grantee portal, you're going to want to always see that your status is in good standing. And with that, that includes sam.gov, your FEIN number, Secretary of State is kept up to date. So you want to make sure that all of those are in good standing. Oftentimes, one of the questions that I get regarding your standing is, or even how often should I log in or check my GATA grantee portal? It is a recommendation that you log into your GATA grantee portal minimally once a month, if not weekly, just to make sure that everything is up to date. So who should have access to the GATA or Amplifund? And the answer is always, it depends. It depends on who from your organization is dealing with or would touch a grant in any form. So this means those that would be applying for an opportunity. those that would be reconciling any type of audit or fiscal management within the system, whether it's Amplifund or GATA itself. All of that begins in the GATA grantee portal. So one of them is always making sure that you do have a public.external.illinois.gov username. Remember, that part, it sometimes is a little bit confusing because of that at public. Many people think that you are receiving an email, and that is not correct. This is part of an extension where it allows you to have access to one or both of the systems. So it is not an email, but you want to make sure that you use the email that is associated with the organization that you're applying for or on behalf of. Some of this is basic information considering this group, but creating that GATA grantee portal user, maybe you're like, do I have an account? What is my email? There is a part in the GATA grantee portal where you can log in and ask questions. So there is a frequently asked questions that will help you associate. Maybe you are a consultant and you work with several organizations and you need access to those. There are ways there that will show you how to link to different organizations and as well. All of this as a reminder, you will be receiving these slides, and the links here are live hyperlinks that will take you to the sites that I am reviewing. So one of the newest parts, and I'm talking new within the last two years, is the type of access that you will be giving that user. So there are two types of access. One is strictly to the GATA grantee portal, and the other one is the Amplifund system. Within your organization's identifying of who has an access, you're going to be able to see or designate if one person needs access to both systems, meaning the GATA grantee portal and an Amplifund, or they are strictly using Amplifund and do not need access to the portal. Those are determinations that you within your organization would need to decide who should have access to what. So what does that look like? If a person has access to Amplifund only, it will say that. It will say Amplifund only as opposed to saying full access. So these are some of the distinctions that I want to make sure you know or can see, because many times when people are trying to log into the Amplifund system, if you are not a designated user for your organization, it will say system, contact system administrator. And many times our users think that the system administrator is the administrator of Amplifund, but indeed it is the administrator of your organization. So if you're not able to log in, that means you need to step back, go back into the GATA grantee portal and gain access that way. So many times that is all of this is managed within your organization. So understanding who can give you that access, and you then determine that list of the people who would be part of your organization that would have access to one versus the other. So when you are logging into Amplifund, especially given that you have that at Illinois or public.external.illinois.gov, you will then be able to log into it as the public account using that, your username and that password that you established. That will then give you access. And always the landing page is the calendar. Once you see this calendar in Amplifund, this means that you have access and you are in the Amplifund system. So how does this relate to, especially with you applying for or looking for opportunities? Well, within this, there's always the place on where do I find these opportunities? The one place that it is recommended that you go to is, especially if you're looking for opportunities within a state in agency, is the GATA website. When you log into the GATA website, you're gonna click here to browse a list of current funding opportunities. When you log into there, there's even this other part where you could subscribe. You would be able to subscribe to the mailing list, and every Friday you will receive a list of the opportunities that the state agency has posted. So therefore you can find something that fits your organization's mission and program goals. So this is a snippet of current funding opportunities. Where you see the GMS box, that indicates that this opportunity is posted in Amplifund. What it means by being posted in Amplifund is that you would need to click on that link. It'll take you to Amplifund, and that's where you would continue with your opportunity review, submission, and any future work that would be part of that an opportunity. Notice the ones that do not have the GMS. Those are what I kindly call the old-fashioned way. This is where you would be applying for, you would click on that link and you would be able to see the opportunity and apply for that opportunity, all submitted through whichever system that agency is using. In this example, DHS has their own system, and that's what you would use to apply. But always keep in mind that that green GMS box indicates that that opportunity is an Amplifund. So just a brief an overview emphasizing what Susan was talking about regarding your opportunities. Things that you always want to think about is when is the close date and time? You want to know what is the period of performance for that program? Am I able to fit within that schedule of whatever that period of performance is? Other things that you need to pay attention to is submitting that an application, and most importantly, eligibility. Am I eligible to apply? Does my organization fit those requirements that are part of that opportunity? When you have made that decision to follow that Amplifund link, the thing that you will see is it will take you to a page and where you could either download that opportunity and read it, see if these are all of the things that will fit your program. And when you are ready and you say, yes, this is an opportunity that fits our mission, our goal, then you would continue to apply. Once you are in Amplifund, one of the recommendations is that you save often. Just like when you access your bank account online or a credit card or anything that is a secured site, if there is an inactivity, that site will close, meaning it will just close down when there is inactivity. So you want to make sure, let's say that you are reading through a question and you're thinking about it, you need to talk to one of your peers to be able to answer that question. And then you come back and the site has then closed. If you didn't click save or even save and continue, that information may be lost. So always recommending when you are in Amplifund that you click save or save and continue, and you can always come back and complete that information later. So other things that I ask you to remember, especially for opportunities that you see posted in Amplifund, is that you want to make sure that you've completed all of the forms and you mark everything as complete. So you're able to click on the submit button. The other part of it is that once you submit your application, Amplifund will auto-generate an email notifying you that your application has been received, that it has been successfully submitted. Because this is a system, late submissions are often rejected. So please pay attention to the date, to the time. Central Standard Time is what oftentimes is the time listed within the opportunity. So just as Susan said, you want to make sure that you give your agency, your organization enough time to review that opportunity, be able to complete it and submit it successfully. One other part that is a high recommendation, because of Amplifund, Amplifund has a Zendesk where you could often come to that site. I ask you to register for that site and that you use your organization's email when you register. And the nice thing about this is that this is the same site that we as state agencies come into whenever we need some help getting our opportunities set up. Notice how there's a little box that says grantees. This is geared towards you, the recipient, and how to navigate through the Amplifund system. This is a place that I would highly recommend. There are different videos, different guides, things that will assist you in navigating the Amplifund system. So finally, one of the things that I often want to emphasize is that there is a GATA learning management system, one where we at the Gambi have set up with partnership with the University of Illinois Springfield, where we have different courses available for anyone that wants to learn more about the GATA foundations, pre-award and what that means, post-award audits, and indirect costs. Once again, you will be receiving these slides, and all of that is a direct link to those. So we invite you to register and learn more about the grant process. I believe that towards the end, we can have open questions. And there is all of the resources that I went through in this presentation are available on the last page, including the grantee access guide. So this guide is a great reference for you, especially for new staff that may come into your organization that may need some assistance navigating through either the GATA grantee portal and or Amplifund. So I will pause here, see if there are indeed any questions. If not, I think we will go to the next presenter.
Thank you so much, Adriana, for that overview of those systems. We'll go ahead and introduce our third and fourth speakers who are going to discuss developing a grant proposal. So we have Dr. Connie Frey-Spurlock, who is the director of the Successful Communities Collaborative at SIUE. She specializes in community university collaborations, community engagement, and sustainability, with a focus on leveraging resources from across the SIU system to create mutually beneficial relationships with Southern Illinois communities. And we also have Dr. Diane Cox, who's the director of grant development at SIUE as well. And since arriving at SIUE as the Director of Grant Development, she began working with faculty and staff to help link university resources to communities and underserved populations to address community identified areas of need. This work has included identifying funding opportunities, as well as creating and conducting grant development workshops to help nonprofit organizations and local communities in developing capacity to pursue external funding opportunities. So I'll turn it over to you two.
Thank you so much, Linda. I will kick us off and then ask my colleague Diane to add to the conversation. And Diane, you're going to share the slides, I believe?
Yes, I am.
Okay, while Diane's getting those pulled up, I will note that I am now director of the Southern Illinois University System, the Office of Community Engagement there. I have stepped away from the SIUE, Successful Communities Collaborative program, but still continue that work. So the mission, Diane, if we can move forward, the mission of our office basically is to connect all the great resources that we have at the university system with our community partners. And our partners take the form of sometimes individuals with great passion and dedication to their communities. Other times it's grassroots groups, nonprofits, municipal entities, and certainly sometimes even for-profit and corporate entities, industry partners are included. But we look to create mutually beneficial partnerships with those entities so that we all benefit from the relationship. So, for example, our students get great opportunities to apply what they're learning in the classroom while being mentored and networked with our local community members. As at the same time, our community partners are getting their agendas moved forward. So we do really lean into the idea that we are following the lead of the communities. So in terms of some of the things that Susan mentioned in terms of community engagement, we are the Office of Community Engagement, and so we do a lot of that work. Sometimes it looks like the things that Susan outlined, but other times, and quite frankly, a significant amount of our work really is more about hanging out, if you will, non-transactional types of relationships, right? Sharing space with folks and developing trust, which we'll get to. In fact, we'll go ahead and move forward if that's okay, Diane. But developing trust with our community partners so that we can get into some of the more wicked and challenging problems. And so in terms of community resiliency, these are some of the projects that we have taken on so far, again, that are largely directed and led by community partners. So we hear far too often, as I'm sure several of you do as well, from our community partners and collaborators in the American Bottoms community about the impact of increasingly heavy and increasingly more frequent heavy rains that cause flooding at the municipal as well as, of course, at the household level. And so we've been leveraging expertise around stormwater management, for example, flood mitigation expertise across the SIU system, while also using that expertise and the community observations and knowledge to form what we think are much stronger grant proposals and applications, because it is informed both by the academic knowledge that we have and the local community-based knowledge. I'm going to skip ahead, but you can see that other resiliency types of initiatives that are deeply embedded and driven by community include our broadband and digital equity work, workforce development in several areas, and we use strategic doing as a method to help folks achieve their goals and to keep moving their agenda forward. Again, as Susan mentioned, too often those strategic plans sit and collect dust. We've found success in using a strategic doing methodology to make sure actions get done and again, agendas get moved forward. So let's move forward. Oh, we've got a strategic doing champion in the audience. That's great. Okay, and so we do all this work in the Metro East as a large footprint, but then also at the system level, we do it with the most southern communities in the state. So about Springfield to the most southern tip of the state. And oftentimes those communities have not had the best relationships with entities like yours, large government, state entities. And so we're very mindful and strategic in how we engage with community and the frameworks that we use. Again, so we can work through past issues of distrust and develop the kind of trust so that we can collaborate and do great work and lift up all of our community partners. So if anyone would like more information, I can certainly follow up and share some details on this, but you've heard we'll also be sharing our slides out. So if we move forward, I'm going to hand this off to Diane. The Office of Community Engagement was able to secure a Mosaic Momentum Fund in partnership with the Midwest Climate Collaborative that serves the entire Midwest, but is based out of Washington University in St. Louis. And we've been supporting folks throughout the Midwest through these workshops to develop the strongest proposals possible to make sure, as Adriana pointed out, that GATA numbers, UEIs, all those fun things are current and in good standing. And then also making sure that folks know what they're getting themselves into in terms of the management side of things. So Diane, if you'll pick that up, I will drop the link to this website so folks can find more information. I'll drop that in the chat now.
Okay, so unfortunately, I can't tell you how to write a successful proposal in 5 minutes. But what I can do is point you to some resources that can support you and also build a little bit on both Susan and Adriana's excellent guidance around getting ready, getting your community ready, and then being able to navigate at least one of the grant systems in the state of Illinois. The Midwest Climate Collaborative, when we put the proposal together, they actually came to us. This first workshop here helps community groups, community-based organizations get ready by helping them to establish their SAMS account, get their UEI number. We'll also help them with minority and women certification. So, you know, if that's of interest to you, feel free to sign up on this website. You do not have to be a member of the Midwest Climate Collaborative to attend these workshops. Now, the grant processes overview workshops, we're doing it 2 different ways. We just finished an in-person one in Wisconsin, and there are a couple more that we'll be doing across, I can't remember how many state areas, but like 9, I think. But they are so popular. If you go to this link that kind of gives you, whoops, and you look down here at the bottom, it says Grant Processes Overview Series, Recordings and Materials. Basically, it's a little bit of an abbreviated version of that all-day Grant Processes Overview workshop and all the materials. And I'm going to show you one of the materials that I think is particularly helpful. At least we've been told that it is. And that is an outline that you can use. And this is on that website. I apologize for doing this to your eyeballs. But basically, it's an outline, because if you start your grant proposal with an outline and just put your notes in there, a lot of times all you have to do is write those connection phrases and then you pretty much got it. So basically, this is the basic outline for almost any proposal. Now, a lot of the state proposals are in the system and their applications. They have a section for each question, so you just answer the question. But the questions are tied to the topics in here. Of particular importance is, what is your organization? Is it aligned with the funding opportunity purpose? Why are you the best organization, and why is your project the best to address whatever the need is that funding opportunity wants to address? So those are probably 2, 3, and 4 there are probably the most important sections to make a really strong case for funding your proposal. And I'm not going to go through the rest of this, but as I said, this handout is on the website. So feel free to use it. We also have some synchronous, asynchronous modules that carry a digital alternative certification. They take about 6 months for the grant development modules. At the end of the modules, the people do have a submission-ready proposal. It is very labor intensive. I'll just tell you that. And I don't recommend it for anybody that wants a quick and dirty, because it's not a quick and dirty. We also developed some grant management modules. What do you do after you get the award? How do you, and it was great. I learned something from Adriana. I did not know that they had like an audit, how you get ready for an audit workshop. I'm going to go in there and look at that and make sure I share that link with folks, but that's part of the grant management modules. What do you do after you get the money? So feel free, even though the grant development modules are full sign up, we're talking about funding more cadres. And Connie and I are always looking for grants to put these in. So if you're possibly interested after you go in and read about it here, just let us know and we'll make sure to reach out to you if we get another funding opportunity. The last thing I want to tell you is when you're talking about writing a successful proposal, Adriana hit the nail on the head. You got to be eligible. But beyond that, you also have to make sure to read that funding opportunity to make sure you have the internal capacity to manage the grant. Because if you don't, you need to put a grant management company in the budget to manage the money for you. And sometimes if it's a new community-based organization, that's the best way to go because you haven't demonstrated fiscal capability yet, but you could if you bring on an experienced grant management company. The other thing that I want to say and hasn't been touched on is look at the timeline. If you don't have time to write a quality proposal, most of them come around annually or some version of them come around annually. Skip it and shoot for the next time. But Connie, have I forgotten anything?
I'll just add to think about who's on the team, right? Thinking about the capacity and the areas of strength that everyone on the team either needs to have or currently has, and thinking about how that aligns with the scope of the funding opportunity and making sure all of that expertise is at the table. And once they are, using that timeline with attached responsibilities with key people attached to those with timelines and specific content or expectations so that folks on the team all know what their responsibility is. And so it all comes together as nicely as it can.
And if you cannot find people to sit on your team that have that demonstrated expertise, then hire an external consultant and put them in there. That's a kind of a workaround, particularly for newer community-based organizations. The other thing that I wanted to say was if you are not eligible, but it really aligns closely with what the purpose of your organization is, then find somebody who is. I have never reached out to anybody that would turn down having a free grant proposal written for them. So if you're willing to do that, reach out and try and find somebody who is eligible, whose organization also aligns with the purpose of the funding announcement. Connie and I do a lot of work all the time with communities. We go out there. I'll come out and do an all-day workshop for you. All you have to do is if your community has a group that is interested, those grant processes overviews were originally developed for our community-based organizations in the St. Louis area through our Ed Outreach office, and they are full every single time we run them. So just reach out and let us know if we can help.
Thanks, all.
Thank you both so much. That was very informative. I am curious about your grant workshop series. Are people meant to attend that grant ready one first and do each of them, or can they kind of just take it out of order and as needed?
Okay, the grant processes overview is an 80,000 view of the grant cycle. It's an 80,000 bird's eye view, kind of lets people know what they're getting into. The grant development module with the alternative certification takes you through all the steps in writing a successful federal proposal, which we know can be really probably not a real good use of your time in this particular political climate right now, but it's a skill that helps you write a grant for states, funding opportunities, foundations, associations, whatever. The grant ready, you have to have those numbers, you have to have those certs before you can ever apply for even a state grant and for some foundation grants. So that I would say would be the first one. The rest of them are just what you need. They don't have to be taken in sequence. So you can read about them there on the MCC website and find out, which one best fits your needs.
That's great. Thank you so much. So we are in our Q&A portion of this right now. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself. I do have a couple other questions that I can ask to give you all some time to think of some good questions. For Susan, I'm really curious, what tools or resources would you recommend for communities that are starting on the planning process? Maybe they don't have a formal planner, they're a bit more new to this.
You know what, Linda, it really depends. It depends on what they're trying to accomplish and the scope of the plan that they're seeking, whether they're looking for a comprehensive plan or maybe just a strategic plan. It also depends internally on what their capacity is to work on that and also to help draft that plan. Um, or do they have a resource maybe locally that will help assist them with that? There is, of course, especially more with the shorter plans, strategic planning, perhaps there's maybe an opportunity that University of Illinois Extension, some of our team might be able to help facilitate a process. There's certainly mapping the future of your community at Illinois Institute for Rural Affairs at Western. There may be other resources associated with other universities, but typically the comprehensive plan, given the scope and the time frame commitment of that, you may either be looking to hire someone to do that, or it might even be a consultant that specializes in that process. So, and some Connie did put mapping the future, which is just what I just mentioned. So, as a potential resource. So, but it really just depends on what you're trying to accomplish and the scope of it. So.
That's a good point. Connie and Dan, was there anything you'd want to add to that? For sure, a little bit more about mapping the future.
Well, we have worked with Brooklyn in their revitalization plan using mapping the future. The groundswell of involvement that has come out of that was not something that I would have expected from a 400 and some member community. So it's while it's very structured, it's also very loose, and it absolutely gets everybody involved in the whole process, which, as Susan said, is key. You've got to involve your community.
And I echo the great work that the folks there are doing. I'll also, of course, say that sometimes we lean heavily on data, right, to inform and to provide context for the grant work. We have graduate assistants, for example, that are mining data sets that are publicly available as well as proprietary to the system to help community leaders understand better their communities, because sometimes, right, community members don't have access to those kinds of data, and so that's not part of their understanding, not part of their decision making. And so we're also really, again, leaning into what some academics are really great at, and that's bringing that data to the forefront and making it as accessible and usable to our community members as possible.
That's a great point, Connie. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate those answers. Does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask?
Yeah, this is Kevin Sutter. I'm with the Village of McChesney Park. I just want to thank you all for this presentation. I found this really helpful. I'm a management analyst here, so I help the village administrator apply for grants and find out, what the gaps are and what our needs are here in McChesney Park. But one of the challenges we have, especially when it comes to creating this community vision, is that our village board has not historically found the need to do a strategic plan. Now we have a comprehensive plan for 10 years, and that's more of like a land plan when it comes to hazard mitigation and development. But we don't have a shorter term strategic plan. What would you suggest as a way to, I don't know, propose a strategic plan to the board, or to try to get board buy-in to develop some sort of plan?
Kevin, I don't know anybody that's ever turned down what some people see as free money, which are grants. Although that being said, all grants come with strings attached. There are certain responsibilities, but it's not about so much having a strategic plan as it is about how would you like to see the community improved? Where can we get the money to do that? And oh, by the way, we have to have community input and some kind of a short-term, don't say strategic plan if they're allergic to that term, but some kind of a plan to get there and go at it from the back door.
That's great. Thank you.
And Kevin, that could also be just as she said, just identifying one specific topic area, something that's important to the community that you want to work on, and maybe just developing a plan on how you accomplish and seek out funding to do that. And maybe you don't have to call it a comprehensive or strategic plan, but as Diane said, just start with an issue.
Yeah, we call it action plans. Take an action to make the communities a better place. And Kevin, Connie, and I are happy to come out and sit down with you and kind of sketch out. I don't know. We have war rooms all over the place. Plan out your plan. So we're happy to help you do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
We probably have time for one more question if anyone has one.
Nobody else has one, I have one. We talked about the grant management and how they should plan to potentially hire a third party, but I wanted to ask a clarifying question. Could they also write into that grant to hire a grant manager? So not only like bringing a position to the community, but potentially hiring someone from the community to work to manage that grant?
Absolutely. You just have to look to see what's allowed in the NOFO, in the funding announcement. The cautionary note to that is I would build some kind of consultant time in to help that community member develop the capacity to effectively manage that grant, particularly federal grants. Boy, you can get in trouble in a big hurry with those. And it doesn't take that long to learn how to do them, but it helps to have somebody who's lived through them before and know all the potholes that could be down the road. So, but absolutely, the more you can involve the community, the better.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. right, well, thank you so much to our speakers for presenting today, and thank you, Randa Watts, for your help in coordinating this webinar as well. We will have our next Resilient Communities webinar May 20th, and it will be about green infrastructure and grant funding and how to plan those types of projects. So we hope to see you there, and we hope that you enjoyed this webinar and that it was helpful.
Don't forget to fill out our survey if you have a minute. Thank you all.